Britain says 3 Iranian boats tried to intercept a British oil tanker near the Persian Gulf. Now, London says they were driven off by a Royal Navy frigate, the HMS Montrose, escorting that tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. The frigate, seen here escorting other ships, aimed its deck guns at the Iranian vessels as a warning. No shots were fired. Iran has denied that any of its boats tried to stop that tanker, saying they were simply carrying out routine duties. Now, the British government called for calm after the incident. We are concerned by this action, they said, and continue to urge the Iranian authorities to de-escalate the situation in the region. Well, this incident comes after a warning yesterday from the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. He said that Iran was ready to retaliate after one of its oil tankers was seized off the coast of Gibraltar last week. Britain claims that Iranian tanker was delivering oil to Syria in violation of EU sanctions.
You, Great Britain, are the initiator of insecurity, and you will realize the consequences later. Now you are so hopeless that when one of your tankers wants to move in the region, you have to bring in your frigates to escort it, because you are scared.
For more on this, let's bring in analyst Simon Mabon, a lecturer in international relations at the University of Lancaster in Britain. Thanks so much for coming in for us. Tensions have already been very high in the Gulf. How much of an escalation is this incident?
I think it's quite a seismic escalation, to be honest. We've heard a lot of words. We've heard rhetoric. We've heard cycles of tit-for-tat diplomatic rhetoric from both sides, urging calm, calling on the other or calling out the other, I should say, for these actions. But this is, it seems to be at least at the next step, taking this to the next level of actually putting these words into action. And I think what we've got to do is contextualize it further and say that, look, this isn't just a product of recent tensions between the UK and Iran, but this goes back decades. The Iranian regime has always viewed Britain with a great deal of hostility, dating back to the 1953 coup d'etat that toppled the democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. So there's a great deal of tension here, deep structural tensions between the two states that really do escalate quite quickly when there are particular crises like this one, and it really looks to be coming to the fore.
Simon, we're waiting for a confirmation on a lot of the details in this story, but it looks like that apparently these were Iranian Revolutionary Guard armed vessels trying to interrupt this British oil tanker. How likely is Iran to use vessels like those to block the Strait of Hormuz and disrupt the flow of trade in oil?
Well, you're right to say that we're waiting for confirmation. The Revolutionary Guard have denied involvement, as far as I'm aware, at present. Of course, that doesn't mean to say that they're not involved. It's just a posturing, I guess. But with regard to closing the Strait of Hormuz, we've heard over the past number of years that Iran has threatened to close the strait on a number of occasions. And there are several ways of doing that, of course. One of the ways is mining the strait by dropping deep water mines to prevent ships from accessing. But perhaps the easier option, the more obvious option, is with the use of these small armed boats that are able to then commandeer vessels, such as what we saw today. It seems like the more flexible, the more strategic option that gives Iran the ability to get material and goods out of the strait without having to circumnavigate these mines. So I think this is probably the more obvious strategy that Iran could use if it wanted to disrupt the trade that flows through this busy waterway.
Simon, I'd like to jump in here and ask you this. This incident comes just a day after the U.S. called for an international military alliance to safeguard freedom of navigation in the Gulf. Are we likely to see this coalition coming together?
That's the million-dollar question, I guess. And if you look at it at a sort of prima facie level, you would see that there are a great number of states who view Iran with a great deal of concern, that are concerned, particularly after what we're seeing this morning, about the potential threat to traffic, to cargo flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. But then the question comes, what would that look like? Who would be involved? What would be the strategic dimensions of that type of coalition? And that's where it would get really quite problematic. And that's where all the political issues that would characterize this coalition would emerge, because there's certainly not a great deal of unification behind the US on this.
Okay,
so while
Simon,
it may seem like a good idea in practice,
I'm sorry, I have to jump in there and wrap this up. Simon Mabon from the University of Lancaster, thanks so very much for coming in, Simon.
thank you.